Today I can buy a tomato in a supermarket. But did you know that in my country, France, tomatoes were considered poisonous? And I couldn't do that 300 years ago. Actually, 200 years ago more, and we had just no tomatoes at all. But this is something I'll explain you after the intro. Long time ago, the story of the tomato began. Its lineage traces back a staggering 50 million years to its oldest ancestor, known as Phisalis infinemundi, or, in simpler terms, Phisalis at the end of the world. This name hails from its ancient habitats located far south, during the Eocene epoch. Surprisingly, this tomato's great-great-great-grandfather once thrived in Antarctica long before it was just ice. As its name suggests, Phisalis infinemundi shares remarkable similarities with the modern Phisalis we still enjoy today. Belonging to the family of the Solanaceae, it gave rise to an array of crops including tomatoes, aubergines, potatoes, tobacco, chili peppers, and yes, even the subscribe button. It's highly likely that birds played an important role in carrying Phisalis infinemundi from Antarctica to South America, where it flourished in the wild, albeit much smaller, roughly the size of peas. Over time, the genus diversified, eventually giving rise to the cherry tomatoes we savor today. Now, here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. The tomato made a remarkable migration from the Andean region to Mesoamerica, where we uncover the earliest traces of domestication around 500 BC, with the Aztecs. These ingenious people cultivated numerous varieties of tomatoes during that era. Interestingly, the tomato we're familiar with today wasn't the top pick for the Aztecs, but the tomatillo, a small green cousin of the tomato, enjoyed both raw and cooked. Remarkably, it remains a staple in the cuisines of Mexico and Guatemala to this day. But let's get back to our tomatoes. Our tomatoes? Our tomatoes! In 1519, the Spanish conquistadors, led by Hernán Cortés, conquered the Aztec Empire, uncovering a wealth of new discoveries unknown to the Europeans. Bernardino de Sahagún, a Franciscan friar who arrived in Mexico in 1560, described them for the first time in a book, the Florentine Codex. The first tomatoes arrived in 1523 to the Old Continent, first arriving in Spain, then spreading to South Italy and Sardinia, all under the Spanish crown's rule. However, Europeans were initially wary of tomatoes due to their resemblance to the toxic belladonna. Consequently, they were primarily used for decoration and medicinal purposes, rather than as food. The word tomato is derived from the Proto-Nahuatl language of the Aztecs, specifically Tomatl, but actually it is not the only one. The first literary mention of tomatoes emerged in 1544 Italy, credited to the botanist Pietro Andrea Mattioli, who named it Mala Aurea in Latin, translating to golden apple or pomidoro in his Italian dialect. This eventually evolved into Pomodoro and became the precursor to many linguistic variations we use today. Notably, we have two predominant words, tomato from Tomatl and the Italian Pomodoro. Today we can see pretty much this language difference in Europe. The continent is almost divided in two big zones with the Nahuan origins on one side and the Italian origins on the other, with also the Austrian version Paradeiser Apfel, or Paradeiser apple, that curiously coincides with their empire borders. In around 1550, Italian peasants were already enjoying tomatoes, as noted by Mattioli the botanist. The term golden apple suggests that the early tomatoes brought to Italy might have been more yellow than red. However, both in Italy and Spain, red tomatoes quickly become the preferred choice. Nevertheless, despite this preference, many agronomists and botanists, including notable figures like John Gerard and Olivier de Serres, an Englishman and a Frenchman respectively, propagated anti-tomato sentiments. They believed the fruit wasn't suitable for consumption and should remain a decorative plant. In Asia, tomatoes were introduced by the Spanish to the Philippines, later spreading across the continent thanks to Portuguese merchants who wielded significant influence in the region. These merchants carried tomatoes throughout their trade routes from Asia to Africa during the 16th century. In China, the Register of the Flowers, written in 1621, refers to the fruit as originating from the West, known as fan kie, or foreign eggplant, and also as shi ong shi, or western red persimmon. This perception of the tomato as a foreign fruit is intriguing. Despite its eventual integration into Chinese cuisine, it faced challenges, becoming a staple compared to Italy, where by the 18th century it was already firmly entrenched in culinary practices. It's during this time that we encounter the earliest mentions of red tomatoes being esteemed as a delicious and versatile fruit in Europe. During the French Revolution, tomatoes gained remarkable popularity in France, especially upon their arrival in Paris. But how did it get there? Legends say that cooks, closely associated with the aristocracy and wary of the guillotine, began incorporating red-colored ingredients into their dishes, symbolizing the revolutionary Frisian cap. However, the most plausible explanation is that the fruit was brought in abundance by Marseille revolutionaries, who triumphantly entered the French capital. Originating from Provence, a region where tomatoes had been cultivated since the 18th century. These revolutionaries brought with them culinary traditions from their homeland. During that era, two renowned provincial restaurants, les Trois Frères Provençaux, the Three Brothers from Provence, established in 1786, and le Bœuf à la mode, the fashionable beef, founded in 1792, gained immense popularity among Parisians. These establishments offered southern French cuisine, including the famous dish ratatouille. Why mention Paris? Well, Paris was the vibrant epicenter of Enlightenment, a city where innovation and change thrived, attracting foreign scientists, politicians, and philosophers, including the American President Jefferson. Following his visit to Paris in 1806, President Jefferson began cultivating tomatoes in his garden. Ironically, while tomatoes were cultivated and consumed in Mexico, the young United States took a somewhat delayed interest in them, compared to Europe. In 1820, Colonel Robert Gibbon Johnson, also a farmer, made history by consuming an entire basket of tomatoes in front of 2,000 people at the Salem County courthouse, debunking the myth of their poisonous nature. This event marked a turning point in the acceptance of tomatoes as a safe and edible food in the United States. In the 19th century, tomatoes underwent significant transformations, much like other fruits and vegetables we are familiar with today. Hybridization became a common practice to enhance yield, taste, and appearance. Alexander Livingstone played a pivotal role in industrial-scale hybridization around 1850, creating 31 varieties. The Pregon, developed in 1870, is the iconic tomato image ingrained in our minds today. We can also talk about pomato, which is an hybridization between tomato and potato. This hybridization of tomato marked the beginning of an industrial revolution in cultivation, revolutionizing both cultivation and transportation. The tomatoes, with their perfectly round and smooth characteristics, proved immensely practical for logistics and extended preservation. The second half of the 19th century witnessed the initial industrial transformations of tomatoes. In Italy, during the Expedition of the Thousands led by Giuseppe Garibaldi, tomatoes gained popularity in the north. Italy stands as the birthplace of industrialized tomato, with Parma considered its cradle. In 1865, agronomist Professor Tornioni in Parma contemplated canning tomatoes, initiating the trend. A decade later, Francesco Cirio established the first canning industry in Turin, followed by Mutti in 1899. Both Cirio and Mutti gained global acclaim, maintaining prestige even today. As for which is better, well, that remains a mystery since neither sponsored this video. If you enjoy my content, show support by liking, subscribing and commenting. Moving forward, the Italian tomato industry expanded throughout Europe and later globally, with the United States following suit. In 1875, Henry John Heinz founded his company, later evolving into an industrial empire. Did you know the fascinating story behind ketchup? Ketchup originated from the Minnan language, spoken in southern China, where it was known as ketchup, referring to a sauce made from fermented fish in brine. This sauce traveled with Chinese sailors to Southeast Asia and even Persia 500 years ago. In the 17th century, Dutch and British merchants played a significant role in popularizing it, turning it into a profitable commodity. Despite being sold expensively in Europe, recipes emerged from homemade versions, often incorporating mushrooms, first in England and later in America. British cooks began incorporating tomatoes into ketchup recipes during the 19th century, gradually phasing out the fish. By 1890, American producers added sugar to extend its shelf life and enhance its appeal. Thus, the history of ketchup serves as a vivid illustration of globalization, evolving from its origins in Asia to becoming a staple in the West through various transformations. Between love and fear, travels and sedentary, today the tomato is a versatile food enjoyed worldwide in various forms. Whether eaten raw, cooked, or processed by food industries, it remains a staple in diets across the globe. Raw tomatoes are commonly found in salads, sandwiches, and numerous fresh recipes. When cooked, tomatoes are used to create flavorful sauces, soups, stews, and other simmered dishes. Additionally, food industries process tomatoes into products, providing consumers with a diverse range of options and ensuring its availability throughout the year.